When it comes to Christopher and Tony, it's clear to see that they had an extremely strong relationship, with the entire notion of their friendship representing a father and son bond. However, their relationship is one that is unlike any other relationship that Tony has with any of his friends. In certain moments throughout the show, Tony seems to trust Christopher more than anyone by teaching him the ins and outs of the mafia. Additionally, Tony cherishes Christopher's well-being in life, despite Christopher being a prime candidate to flip to the feds by being addicted to heroin and alcohol and wanting to pursue a career in the film industry. Throughout the series, there are many episodes that display their strong relationship, as Christopher's existence and relationship with Tony begins and ends the same way it started, with him driving Tony for one last time. Of course, there are multiple episodes that display their strong bond, such as Season 6's The Ride, where the two reminisce on the good old days of working in the mafia together and Tony manipulating Christopher into indulging back into wine for the first time since being sober. But when it comes to Christopher and Tony's relationship, there's one episode that stands tall above the rest, and that is episode 14 of Season 6, Stage 5. In this video, I'll be exploring the symbolism that is represented throughout the episode, as well as discussing about the tragic divorce that took place between Tony and Christopher. Before we get started, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. Links will be in the description below. We know that Christopher has carried a passion for filmmaking and has always had a lifelong dream to work in cinema, as this is made evident to us in the pilot with Christopher contemplating selling his life story, and in Season 2's episode 7, D-Girl, where Christopher spends a weekend on a film set with Jon Favreau and ponders leaving Tony and New Jersey. In Stage 5, we see this dream become a reality, as the episode opens with a murder taking place inside a car shop. We are then treated to the discovery that we are watching a scene from Christopher's upcoming movie, Cleaver. While Christopher's film seems to clash with fiction of the slasher genre and reality of his mafia-infused lifestyle and his historic background, perhaps Cleaver is an autobiography type of film. The entire concept for the movie could come from the mind of Moltisanti, with the film's title potentially being a reference to his first murder. As in the pilot, Christopher used a cleaver lined with cocaine to distract his first murder victim in Emil Kolar just seconds before taking his life. The film's initial title, Pork Store Killer, also alludes to Christopher's first killing, as this strengthens the notion that Christopher's first killing in Emil Kolar still weighs heavily on his self-conscious and self-esteem.
And he goes out to get revenge on everyone, especially the boss, which is a pretty solid role. Right now, it's called Pork Store Killer.
Cleaver starred Jonathan LaPaglia and Daniel Baldwin, both of which were represented as either an older brother or younger brother in the film as they are in real life. Baldwin and LaPaglia acted as replacements for Soprano and Moltisanti within the film, as the two had the same father and son relationship as Christopher and Tony did in real life. When it comes to cinema, it can often be perceived as life imitating art. And while The Sopranos isn't an autobiographical series, it portrays aspects within Italian culture and for residents within New Jersey. The same can be said for Christopher's film, Cleaver, as his film largely focuses on key events such as the conflict between Tony and Adriana that was ultimately the beginning of the end of Tony and Christopher's relationship. Christopher obviously still believes that there was something that happened between Tony and Adriana, as he bases part of his film where the boss, Sally Boy, sleeps with Michael's fiancée. It's clear that Christopher deep down still seeks revenge towards Tony, as the film ends with Michael striking a cleaver into the head of Sally Boy. We then cut to a cross and an Italian hunchback on the cornicello hanging from the rearview mirror. The cornicello, also known as the Little Horn, is worn to protect individuals from the evil eye, also known as the malocchio, and just bad luck in general. Earlier in the series, we saw a similar looking cornicello when Furio returned from Naples and brought back gifts for Meadow and AJ. Related to the cornicello is the horned hand, an Italian hand gesture that individuals also do to ward off evil spirits in a similar fashion to Polly's hand gestures. In Cleaver, the first body part we see from the slashed Michael is his hand coming out of the trunk. This hand coming out of the trunk and the cornicello within the film could possibly be emphasizing that Sally Boy is killed by Michael for sleeping with his fiancée. Again, this could have been Christopher's film imitating his life, but as we all know, Tony never died from the hands of Christopher. While Tony never caught the reference of himself in Christopher's film Cleaver, others such as Carmela, Rosalie, Silvio, and AJ did. However, those who did notice the sexual tension believe this pointed to Tony's guilt on the situation. But it's no surprise that Tony didn't seem to catch the reference of himself within the film, because nothing between him and Adriana actually happened, unlike Sally Boy and Michael's fiancé. When Carmela confronts Christopher about the odd sexual narrative that made its way into his apparent biographical film, he denies putting this plot into the film despite having his name attached to the screenplay's credits. As a result, Christopher panics and threatens JT to come up with an explanation to why Sally Boy slept with Michael's fiancée before Tony begins to question his authority. Tony's concern that Cleaver is based on him and his old relationship with him and Adriana grows after Carmela breaks the news to him.
It was based on you.
I know, you said. The yelling.
Sally Boy, the boss, he fucked the guy's fiancée.
The thing with Adriana?
However, when she does this, Tony's response is that Cleaver is a movie and it's fictional.
It's a movie. It's fictional.
Interestingly enough, this line of dialogue mirrors the words that Tony tells AJ in season 6's episode 8, Johnny Cakes. After AJ tried to attack Uncle Junior with a knife and he cites a scene from The Godfather, Tony echoes these same fictional words that he said about Cleaver.
It's a movie.
Tony comes to the realization that Cleaver is really based on him and his relationship with Christopher and Adriana. Not just with the reference of a mob boss wearing a robe in the basement, but he also discovers this when he feels out Silvio for his thoughts on the film. While at the Bada Bing, JT shows up and explains his misleading perception for the realistic affair that he took right out of the 1950 film Born Yesterday. Tony seems to see right through JT's fraudulence, especially due to the fact that JT asked to meet Christopher at the Bing, as everyone knows that Christopher doesn't hang around the Bing anymore due to his sobriety. What also seems to tip Tony off of JT's lies is the gash on his head that seems to make Tony suspicious, as he assumes that it's the result of Christopher threatening to cover up his storyline that mimics Adriana and Tony's relationship within Cleaver. Tony's suspicions continue after he watches Born Yesterday, and comes to the realization that JT was lying to him and feeding him useless information. We see Tony's frustrations come to life by the way Christopher depicted him out to be in Cleaver, as this makes Tony worried about his legacy.
This is the image of me he leaves to the world. All those memories are for what? All I am to him is some asshole bully.
We know that Tony has convinced himself that he's a good guy, but this self-conception that Tony has is demolished from Christopher's movie. While releasing this extreme amount of anger and emotion out in therapy towards Dr. Melfi, it's quite possible that these emotions are what drives Tony to murder his beloved nephew just a few episodes later. Lastly, there's the episode's ending, the infamous baptism scene, as Tony stands godfather to Christopher's daughter Caitlin during her immersion into Christianity. Personally, this scene instantly reminds me of the memorable baptism scene from The Godfather. And while there is certainly less blood that appears in The Sopranos' baptism scene compared to The Godfather's that featured deaths like Mo Green, in The Sopranos' baptism scene, blood is a reoccurring reference, as the song Evidently Chicken Town by John Cooper Clarke scores the beautiful scene. The reoccurring use of the word bloody makes the scene eerie and provides an alternative meaning towards the scene. With Tony and Christopher embracing one another with an uncomfortable hug, we see that there is still tension between the two, as it looks as if Christopher finally comes to the realization that there is no escaping the Mafia or Tony's toxic and rude hypocrisy, but also that sooner or later he'll likely wind up dead, potentially from the image of Tony that he set out to the world in Cleaver. And with the film Cleaver, Christopher has officially become a liability to Tony and will never be viewed the same no matter what he does. With Tony being a godfather to his daughter, we see the resent, disgust, and anger in Christopher's eyes during this hug. And with Tony, he comes to terms that Christopher hates him, as he most certainly thinks he had a relationship with Adriana.
And all I did for this fucking kid, and he fucking hates me so much. I think he fucking despises me. It's pretty obvious. Wants to see me dead.
Throughout the episode, there are plenty of symbolic references that tie into the life of Christopher Moltisanti and his relationship with Tony. The episode is titled Stage 5, a reference to John Sacrimoni being at stage 4 of his cancer illness and stage 5 referring to death. However, there's also the 5 stages of grief, which just so happen to be denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These 5 stages are what Christopher went through after the death of Adriana. In this episode, both Sacrimoni and Moltisanti come to terms with realization and acceptance with themselves. For John, he accepts the existence of La Cosa Nostra and that he will die of cancer.
I'll die, aren't I?
With Christopher, he finally realizes that Tony was not the role model he always thought he was, and in Season 1, Episode 3, it was titled Denial, Anger, and Acceptance. There's also the individual of Warren Feldman, who states to Sacrimoni that he killed his wife because at that point I had to fully commit. This is much like Christopher choosing to side with Tony and killing Adriana, as Christopher decided at that moment where he spotted the couple at the gas station that he was fully committed to Tony despite their differences and with the regularness of life being too difficult to handle. With Sacrimoni, he can't outrun the past of being in the mafia and his addiction to smoking, as he dies of lung cancer later in the episode. This is much like Christopher not being able to escape his drug addiction and his past with Adriana, but also his relationship with Tony, as he becomes more glued to Tony with his daughter being baptized by his apparent role model that he hates so much. It's obvious to see that Christopher and Tony's relationship still bothers Christopher as it makes its way into his movie, and the ending of Stage 5 in my opinion is possibly the best scene throughout the entire series, as this scene with no dialogue from Tony or Christopher and the exceptional choice of music by David Chase displays the brilliance of the show. While during this hug, the two embrace one another, but at the same time, the two despise one another in different ways. With Christopher, he despises Tony's mentality, hypocrisy, and the attitude that Tony carries towards him, especially when it came to Christopher being sober, something that Tony and everyone else could never understand. With Tony, we see in therapy that he loves Christopher so much, but comes to terms that he's really become a horrible person towards his nephew that he loves unconditionally. Tony and Christopher's relationship was one unlike any in the series. The father and son relationship was something that Tony carried with him as learned from Christopher's father, Dickie. Their relationship was bound to end up on the rocks, especially with Christopher using drugs and wanting to project his life story to the screen. At times, the two despised one another and looked down upon one another, but in the end, their bond could never be broken and they both loved each other so much due to their childhood relationship. I would love to hear your thoughts about Tony and Christopher's relationship. Let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos themed videos, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.